Hello there, and welcome to this week's edition of Creative Critique. The newly released cinematic film that I saw this week was the newest remake of a classic horror film, and that film is, of course, Poltergeist. It's very fair to say that there's been an absolute array of remakes of classic horror films in the last, seven, well, to be honest, probably the last 10 years, be they Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Fright Night. There's probably plenty more that I've not even mentioned there, and by my gasp there, you probably kind of know where I'm going to be going with this review of Poltergeist, the newest incarnation of it. The problem is, it's with a remake of a horror film in particular, is it's never going to quite fulfill the original audience's reaction to that film, and possibly garner a new generation's reaction to a film, well, because they've been introduced to a completely different type of horror film from what Poltergeist was and is and was. So, where should we go with this film? I will start with a little bit of disappointment in Sam Rockwell, actually, because I feel he's a really good actor, Sam Rockwell, and he plays the father in the film, and to say he's wasted is an understatement, really, because I've seen his talents in a various number of roles. He can do comedy sidekicks. He can do a main player. But he's just a complete utter wasted. He's signed on for the check, hasn't he? Really, because I don't think he would have seen this film and thought, yeah, I can lend a different aspect to this film. I think this is the sort of film that is a complete put it in my bank. Put it in my bank, please, and I'll be off to do other decent, more interesting projects in the future. So, disappointment there with Sam Rockwell's involvement in this film. And I think, I must say, I will comment upon the fact that I saw it in 3D, even though this is not much to do with a review. What was the point of that film being in 3D at all? They marketed it hugely in Britain anyway as being a 3D film, and other than the opening logos of the studios and maybe a brief moment in the film, what was the point of this film being in 3D? Absolute 0 point. The problem with this film is that because in the original part that the moments are so iconic, from the creepy clown doll to the demonic tree reaching in the house to the furniture being moved around to the swimming pool bodies coming up and the scratching off of the face, and there's so many iconic moments in the Poltergeist hunter's iconic line and the little girl's iconic line. Everything about this original film is iconic, so it's trying to do those moments again, but not absolutely straight out remake them. So they're trying to do almost a half-assed attempt at a remake, really. And also in trying to do it for a new generation, for the sort of films they've been used to over the last 7 or 8 years, which is obviously your sort of haunted house films, very much particularly your Paranormal Activity, and very much in your Insidious mode. There's so many moments in this film that are very much to the exact style and feel of Insidious. I quite enjoyed Insidious, although it did have flaws. Or say, it's not without its flaws, as a certain critic would say. So it's pretty much caught in a it's pretty much caught in a half house. So, like I said, pretty much 99% of the time, if you've witnessed the original, you've likely witnessed it in your youth also. So it's always gonna have a greater effect on you. And obviously, unless also drastic script changes occur during the film, it's going to lose a fear factor or character fear factor of who you think is going to die and live. It's just going to lose that threat. So, there's also, I must say, a little bit where you go into this world, you actually see the world, where you didn't see that in Poltergeist. So that's a bit, you can almost say, taken from Insidious going into the world, although that was done a lot much better, apart from the second part of that. And as a friend commented to me, It just felt very CGI-y. So it just didn't lack any sort of real feel or threat. And that was what made the classic so good, was that feel. And even the bits that seemed now may seem a little bit dated, I think were very effective. So, my overall review is that this new podcast is pretty much simply a halfway house of the original, and the new classic, the new haunted house films of the last 8 years. So, because it can't decide whether it wants to go, which of those avenues to go down, it gets stuck in between, in, well, ironic limbo itself. So is therefore unsatisfying for fans of either of the original or of the new haunted house films. So, it's almost a complete, not waste of time. I will be very harsh and say it's a waste of time. I really hate absolutely slamming a film, but sometimes it needs commenting upon, and sometimes you've got to just review a bad film. Sometimes, to find out how good a reviewer you are, in some senses, I heard one critic say you've got to review some bad films, because if you're reviewing good films all the time, how can you how do you know what's good and how do you know what's bad? Well, this is how I know what's bad, because I've watched this film and there's plenty of things wrong with this film. Just watch the original. Just watch the original. There's no need to watch this new film. In fact, I'd pretty much go on for any other classic horror films, because I've yet to see a better take on a classic horror film than the originals. The only film that comes to mind that I thought was a halfway decent and entertaining remake of a classic horror film was Dawn of the Dead, that Zack Snyder directed. And that's because I think he had sort of a different feel and a different look for it, and that was a bit different, and I quite like that. But as a rule, just watch the original classic horrors, please. Stop remaking these films. If you want to make a bit of money, release these classic films for a limited time. Then people won't get annoyed at you. So yeah, there we go, Poltergeist, the newest reincarnation. Don't watch it. Sorry, just don't watch it. Watch the original Spielberg and Tobe Hooper classic. There we go, yeah. So the classic film I'm going to be reviewing this week is kind of the forgotten Tarantino film, if you will. And that film is True Romance. In a way, why it's forgotten is because he didn't direct it, but it was his script. But it has all the hallmarks of a classic Tarantino film. Only this time it's directed by Tony Scott, which is quite a strange combination of styles and characters in a way. Tony Scott, quite a big bombastic. He made some really massive films in the 80s, including Top Gun, is probably the most famous of his. And he's a bit more known for his overblown nature as a film director, not his more intricate stylings, if you will, which Tarantino is. And this kind of features, because of that weird combination of styles, it's really an interesting watch. Christian Slater is the main lead in this film, and he chances upon Patricia Arquette's female lead, and they form almost a Bonnie and Clyde-esque character feel, and what happens is that she is not a call girl, she's an escort, as she says. Whether she is or not, we don't know really. And they fall in love. He, throughout this love, then goes on a bit of a bit of a crime spree. He definitely does go on a bit of a crime spree. And in doing so, comes across many interesting characters throughout the film. The first of these characters is the pimp and drug dealer associated with Patricia Arquette, who is played by Gary Oldman. And Gary Oldman, in the 90s, I think I've said before on another previous classic review, he just knows how to play a bad guy. And in the 90s, he was playing bad guys all the time. His stylings and look in the film are great. And this, yeah, his appearance in this film is not the only big name actor in a small role. Samuel Jackson, pretty much before the film has begun, has been in the film, and he's out of the film. It's not really a spoiler because you'll see that pretty much in the first couple of scenes. This is a film of big characters, big actors in small roles. And those continue after this, after they have, Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette have stolen his lot of drugs, effectively. They go on to see his father, Christian Slater's father, who was played by Dennis Hopper, who is a former police detective, who is no longer in the force, but has connections. So Christian Slater wants his father to check to see if there's been any rumblings in terms of what he has done effectively. And they have a little bit of a good conversation and interesting conversations, and they then go and leave. They leave to pursue an avenue of trying to sell these drugs. As soon as they've left, effectively, Dennis Hopper is suddenly accosted, is probably the word, by some Sicilian gangsters who have ties with Gary Oldman's drug character, and therefore have a vested interest in where this massive amount of drugs have gone. Christopher, what am I on about? Christopher Walken is this particular Sicilian gangster, and his exchange in this film with Dennis Hopper is some of the best. I don't know how long the scene lasts, probably 8 minutes or so, 7-8 minutes maybe 10 minutes. But it's some of the best interactions I've seen between two characters, and most brilliantly written dialogue that I've seen in a long time. I've seen it a couple of times, the film. But yeah, it's an outstanding scene, and it has been commonly commented upon about being a brilliant scene of two brilliant character actors, two people at the top of their game. Christopher Walken just never boring to watch, and his reactions to Dennis Hopper and to the gangsters around him are just fabulous. I could just watch Christopher Walken laugh and I'd be entertained, to be honest. But yeah, two actors at the top of the game in this scene. I won't say how the scene turns out, but that's a brilliant scene. So after that, Christian Slater and Christopher Arquette go to Los Angeles because he has a connection has a friend who may have a connection in the film industry who may be able to buy the drugs off him. Hey, and the fun just continues, to be honest. How can I describe what happens next? Effectively, they meet his friend who has a connection, who has another friend who's a studio producer, and during this sort of encounter, there's I don't want to say exactly what happens, but there's some more great actors in small roles, be it Chris Penn or Tom Sizemore as detectives. And I don't want to I'm pretty much describing the whole plot here, and I'm probably spoiling it for people who have not seen it, if anyone's watching this and then watching the film. But I will not say any more behind plot details, but it's just an absolute ride of a film. Absolute ride of a film. It's great to watch. It's greatly written. The feel of it's great. It's great. Some nice little bits of music in there. Greatly utilised. Brilliantly utilised. And it's one of those films that has now built up the cult audience and now built up its cult recognition, critically wise, because at the time of release it did nothing at the box office. It pretty much has made its money back and nothing more. It was just after Reservoir Dogs, so I don't think enough attention had gone into it in between, obviously, because Reservoir Dogs was 92, wasn't it, and this was 93. And the year after, Pulp Fiction. Well, the rest is history with Tarantino. So, yeah, if you're a fan of Tarantino, watch this film. If it's not a film you've watched, it may be the one that's bypassed you. But it's a great film. It's a fabulous film to watch, and that is my classic film of the week. So yeah, we had my classic film, which was True Romance, the brilliantly written and entertaining Tarantino, Tony Scott film, and my cinematic release film of the week was the remake of Poltergeist, which I advise you not to see. Watch the classic film, you'll be much better off. So yeah, I thank you for watching if you have, and I hope you subscribe to my channel. I hope to see you again at some point in the future. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.